Hello everyone. Today I want to make a video talking about the male loneliness epidemic and what may be causing this. And I want to make this video even though there's already so many videos and articles on this, because so many of those that I see I think are the product of groupthink and polarization, because the truth is this is kind of a politicized issue at this point. The progressives believe that staying in tradition is causing society's problems and is causing men to suffer, while the conservatives are believing that the fragmentation of tradition is causing men to suffer. And the truth is, it's a mix of both. And I just want to detail what I've seen. I've worked on my mental health for many years now as a man. I've lived in both progressive and conservative cultures. And so I just want to lay it all down for you, because this is a very nuanced topic, and I don't want anyone getting stuck on one pole. So in order to accurately discuss what's going on for men these days and just the suffering that's happening, we first have to detail everything, all the components of their suffering, which we have to first start with what's causing everyone to suffer. You know, there's a mental health crisis for everyone, females included. And so what is causing everyone to suffer in general? Because this is a big component of it. This is arguably like at least 50% of it. So first is increased digital media consumption and screen time. I mean, this is just causing people's attention spans to go down more and more. The infinite scrolling feature worsens people's attention spans significantly. And what digital media consumption at this frequency does is that it doesn't allow us to fully process what we need to process. Like, humans inherently need a lot of time to sit alone and to think and to process things. So I think everyone's minds are getting a bit jumbled up through digital media consumption. Kind of connected to this, like flowing downstream, is also just general hyper comfort that exists in society today. I mean, we all have very comfortable beds. We all, stay inside with AC. We all have, really nice processed foods we always have access to. The list goes on. And I think this hyper comfort is actually a double-edged sword. Because yes, while it does provide us nice things, I think oftentimes it's the contrast between difficulty and easiness that makes us kind of be just the adaptable, flexible humans we are. The third thing that's causing everyone to suffer is more inflammatory diets. So these days, processed food consumption is on the rise. Farming is taking a lot of shortcuts, a lot of chemicals, and just various things are getting into our food, which directly causes our gut and our gut microbiome to function less optimally. There's more inflammation, there's more gut dysbiosis, and look at any research out there on the gut microbiome. It has a huge influence on our brain and just like the rest of our body. So I think this is a huge factor as well. I think the fourth factor is just general pessimism and just the socio-economic state of the world. I think people are just generally not in very high spirits. People are generally very stressed. And this is just sort of like a group mood that everyone's in, and it's kind of contagious. So that's also kind of part of why things are the way they are. And then finally, the fifth reason of what's causing everyone to suffer, I think, is also kind of a lack of spirituality or philosophy. Now, this isn't the sole reason, but I do think, generally speaking, the world is, this techno-capitalist world is getting a bit controlled by, or heavily under the influence of technology, and it's causing a lot of, it's causing the influence of things like God or just greater concepts to lose their meaning a bit. And I think previous generations really anchored and grounded themselves on philosophies and spiritualities. And I think there's a lot less of that now. So now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about what is causing men to suffer, and specifically mixed in with everything I just talked about. So first, I think, and this is just a general concept, is that men aren't fully able to mature these days. And when it comes to maturity, I'm not just talking about like a biological maturity, like puberty. I'm actually talking more about like character maturity. So generally, men have a lot less opportunities to be responsible and to take on things that are purposeful these days. Back in the day, there would be projects like, helping out the village, helping build a house, taking care of a family, just things that, generally support the people around you, and you're playing a crucial role in it. I think that's where a lot of men get their satisfaction from, their pride, their character. And these days, it's kind of like every man for himself. Society is very scattered, and you have to kind of seek those things out by yourself. And while maybe as an adult that's easier, as a kid and a teen growing up, this can be kind of a confusing thing. On top of that, there's just less hard things to do. I talked about the hyper comfort situation earlier. It's true that doing hard things and getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your safety zone, is actually a very empowering thing. It leads to growth. It leads to maturity. It leads to you getting better at things. And also, it just leads to having that contrast and that flexibility. The harder things are at times, the more contrast you'll have and the more grateful you'll be. There's less community as a whole, which in turn makes dating more difficult as well. And that's another thing. I think men derive a lot of their value and purpose from being a man for another person, man or woman. And with less socializing going on, I think it's just hard to be the lone wolf man for so long. And it can be quite demoralizing and pessimism driving. And so, yeah, like the family is a big part of being a man. The man tends to, in a traditional sense, provide for the family. It's like their big life project. It's to reproduce. And if that huge project isn't there, and there isn't like another project they can work on, like starting a business or whatever, things get kind of difficult. So that's lack of maturity as a whole. There's also the testosterone-lowering environmental factors. There's obviously the microplastics that you hear about, but just the hyper comfort and the diets, I think, are causing a lot, are causing just general testosterone levels to lower, and are causing men to be quote unquote softer. I know that's like I know that can be kind of a controversial thing to say. I'm not calling any man soft. I'm just saying, going and doing hard things makes you stronger, makes you more resilient, and that kind of is a driver of masculinity. And then another factor is the stigma around discussing feelings and healing. And this is where, the progressive cultures really have their argument, is that, I think a lot of men just throughout history have been de-incentivized to talk about things that actually challenge them. Usually it's just, physical challenges, but just getting vulnerable, talking about your insecurities, talking about the inner shame that you have. These are things that are very hard for a man to discuss. In this channel, I talk a lot about autism and neurodiversity. It took me so long as a man to open up about being autistic because I was scared of what the other men in my life would think, and that they would think less of me, or that I'd be, less level-headed and things like that. So just generally speaking, yes, like men need to open up a bit more, or just be more comfortable sharing things, and concurrently create an environment for other men to open up about their feelings and to not, push it down. And I think just generally speaking too, like the healing work, there's so many more resources on that these days. There's a lot of discussion on that these days. And I think men are just de-incentivized from reaching out, and actually doing things about that. And I think this is not only partly because of their reputation, but because they just already have sort of like trauma and limiting beliefs instilled in them, trapped in their body. And starting the work is always the hardest, because you have to sort of immediately take the cover off of all your BS, and you kind of see it all at once, and it's really hard and inconvenient. So I think this is something that a lot of men just don't get started in the first place because of this. Which leads me to my next point, which is society's relationship to anger. Okay? So when it comes to things like sadness and fear, society is very accepting of this. If I show fear or sadness around like friends, guys or gals, it tends to be something like, oh, come here, like, that's okay, oh, this is so, like, precious, like, it's kind of like those emotions are very easy for people to console and to relate to. But when it comes to the emotion of anger, which is something that men deal a lot with, I know women deal a lot with it too, but I think men hold on to a lot of anger particularly. Anger is something that people don't know how to console. People don't know how to hold someone else's anger. Anger is a valid emotion. And I think a lot of times when men show anger or show frustration, it's automatically labeled as something, pushed to the side, don't bring that around here, this is an unacceptable emotion. And I think just that general frustration can harden into stubbornness and men just staying in the same place. So I think this is also a huge factor that's influencing men, is just not being able to deal, society in general not being able to deal with anger. So these are sort of all the reasons why I think the male loneliness epidemic is happening. As you can see, there are conservative views on this where tradition is kind of breaking apart, and that's leading to the weakening of men and the suffering of men. And then also there's the progressive view, which is just that, men need to open up a bit more. Men need to use these healing techniques, because ultimately the world is changing, and we need to change with it. And part of that is, having to deal with the death of tradition, and to actually start dealing with what's within, not relying on those old systems to kind of give us fulfillment. So to all the men out there who are watching this, stay strong. To anyone watching this, feel free to comment, ask me any questions. A like and a subscribe would really mean a lot. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next video.